Hey guys, we're going back to Mythic Legions a little bit sooner than I had expected. I was going through some of my videos and some of my figures just to see what I had and hadn't reviewed, and realized that I had missed one of the birds figures when I went through them initially. So I figured, it'd be kind of cool, since I got some of the brand new stuff that I am just really excited over, and I'm really digging the new figures, to go back and see exactly how good the old figures were, especially in comparison. So we have got this guy here. He's already opened, got his packaging here, because he's got accessories in there that I've never really used. But this guy is, and I really have a hard time figuring out his name. It's Phoenicius, I believe is how it's pronounced. I could be wrong. If you know for sure, let me know. Obviously, I've never heard it pronounced until I've tried to say it myself. So he is one of the birds from the Eartheron's Dozen line of Mythic Legions figures. So he's at least a few years old. I honestly don't remember when I got this guy. So I would say we pull him out, but we're not going to do that since he's already out of the packaging. You can see it's a standard Mythic Legions package. It's the exact same stuff that I've shown recently. Collector friendly, with the bubble up front, some artwork on the back. And there's no bios for these guys. They all actually have the same packaging for the most part. I believe they're the same. Even the pictures on the side are the same. It's not even this figure. So let's put him on the stand and take a look. Alright guys, so here is Phoenicius. I would normally say out of the package, but he was already out of the package. But here he is in the orange. So we've got our bird figure here, and if you haven't seen any of my previous reviews, I have reviewed 4 other birds so far. They're all basically the same, with a few exceptions. The head and coloring and paint scheme is really the big thing. But you can maybe go back and look through those in the channel. I'll put a link to the playlist down below. Those are from my more new days on YouTube, so they're not quite up to par with maybe my more recent reviews, but the point will come across. So this guy is part of the Eartheron's Dozen assortment of birds. So I believe that was the second set of birds that Four Horsemen put out, but they're all basically the same. They're basically the exact same body, just with slight differences. So we're going to go through articulation and paint and sculpt, and then we'll talk about accessories, and I'll show you a couple comparisons between other birds, and then I can kind of talk about how these guys are different versus what I have been getting new recently. Now, as far as articulation goes, these guys have what you might expect, some kind of weird articulation, just based on the fact that their sculpt is different because of the whole bird thing. So they've got like the backwards knees and things like that. They do have some kind of weird articulation that I'll talk about, which I kind of think creates a point of failure. One of my figures kind of falls apart if I look at it wrong, so that's why I say that, but I'll touch on that as well. So we've got a head that can swivel. It has some up and down, but not much, and even if it did, the armor piece is going to get in the way. The arms go out, but only so far. There is a bicep swivel. It's a pegged arm. It can pop out, and I've seen that happen on a few. It's not a huge thing, but it's something to talk about. We do have double jointed elbows, and my elbow on the left side, your right, is very loose. It's always been that way, so it's not like a new development with this figure. And then we have hinged and rotating wrists. The torsos on these guys have like a big plug that goes from the center mass into the crotch, and it honestly creates a kind of a weird system. I don't know the name of it. I've never seen a figure that really does something like this, but they can rotate at the waist, and if I pull them back, you can see what I'm talking about in there. There's that white bar that's in there. That's what holds it all together. I have one figure, like I mentioned, it basically falls apart. It can't stay together. So, it's a thing, but it's not a huge deal. I just make him look pretty on the shelf and leave it alone. So the torso can rotate. Everything rotates very freely. It's mostly the up and down that's a problem, because you have a solid mass in there that really doesn't want to let you bend too much. And then you can swivel at the waist, so it's torso and waist. But the waist rotation is really at the waist, not the crotch. It's truly at the waist. The legs can go all the way out. They can kick forward all the way. They can kick backward pretty far. There is a thigh cut. There is a joint at the knee here, so of course it goes backwards. And then it can go forward only so far, but that's just because of the sculpt of the beast. And then there is a joint here, whatever you want to call this, kind of the second ankle. And then there's a joint down here at the foot, and then they also rotate. There is another little bit of articulation on the back side here. So these guys have these little articulated wings on their backpacks, basically, which I thought was a pretty cool touch. I really like it. They all do that. It's just something fun, something different. It doesn't add anything functionally wise, but it's nice to look at, and it's something that adds a little bit of play value to them when you're kind of positioning them around. Sculpt and paint, as far as the overall look and design of these figures, I really do think that that is where these figures shine. They aren't the most articulate, at least for me. I have a hard time at sometimes getting them in some really cool action poses, but they look so cool. I was really drawn into this line just based on looks. Mythic Legions has no presence in anything else. It is its own contained thing. So I went into this just because I thought, hey, these look like cool toys, and ultimately that's what they are. They are cool toys, and they really do look the part. Like I mentioned, though, the birds are mostly reuse. Pretty much everything on this guy except the head and the weapon are identical to every other figure. Their belts are the same, their armor is the same, every little thing is the same. It just comes down to paint detail. So the simple fact that you have a ton of reuse is kind of a negative in some fashion, but at the same time, they're all birds, so they do share those similarities, and they're all supposed to be part of like the same kind of thing. So these are the Eartheron's dozen, so it makes sense that they do look the same in terms of backstory. So it's not too crazy, but again, it's it's a cost-saving measure, and I fully understand it. The head on this guy, though, in terms of what makes him unique, I think is awesome. It's one of the more expressive, I think, at least in terms of the ones that I have, because he's got the open mouth. And this guy just looks like he is ready to throw down. So I always really like this one. He is the favorite for me in terms of the ones that I purchased. And it's kind of weird that I forgot to somehow review this one when I was doing them way back. But yeah, he slipped through the cracks somehow. But yeah, I think he does look really cool. That deep blue is really what drew me to this particular figure. And then you've got those light blue accents all over the armor and all over like the loincloth and everything. And then you've got the dry brushing on the head and the feathers on the arms there, and everything else about the color and the detail in this figure is just exceptional. The belt with all the little doodads on there. He's got, little packs and he's got like utensils and stuff on there. He's got the horn, which everything about this guy I think is sculpted really nicely. There's all sorts of intricate detail in the inner workings of the armor, not to mention all the line work on the outside. So at the outset, if you don't even take into consideration the fact that there is a lot of parts reuse here, ultimately it really doesn't matter because they do look so cool, and their armor is accentuated by its paint to make them stand out as much as possible. So let's take a look at this guy next to a few others so you can get an idea of what I mean when it comes to the level of parts reuse. So here he is next to Vultus, and Vultus is actually an even older bird than Phoenicius. This guy came in a different way, but the armor is still the same. All of the accentuated marks on him are all the same. The loincloth is the same. The chest piece is the same. All the stuff on the back is the same. The stuff on the belt is the same. They're just in different positions right now. But the overall look and feel of them is the same, while at the same time, of course, they're different. He's black, he's blue, and of course the armor color is wildly different. And then, there's a lot of attention put into those heads to make them look unique, because of course they are different species of bird in terms of, what their reference points are. So I do think that while the parts reuse is obviously, it's a thing, it's part of this line, and it's really, really evident with the birds, maybe more so than some of the other figures at times, I do think they go to great detail to make them look as unique as possible while still getting their money's worth out of all the tooling that they put into this line. Now, as far as accessories goes, Phoenicius here doesn't have a ton, and this is kind of one of the gripes that I have with these figures now looking back, but at the same time I kind of get why. So these guys, they're birds, they have clawed feet, as you can, see down there. We talked about those, but they come with extra feet. And one of the things that Four Horsemen did for this particular line was that they had flight type stands and perches for these figures. I never got into those, so unfortunately for me, some of the accessories are kind of wasted, but they are kind of cool, and they do, of course, add to the cost and tooling of the figures, so I kind of understand why this guy only comes with one weapon. Of course, I would have loved to have seen him with more than one, because having played around with him with multiple weapons in his hand, he looks even cooler. But as far as the accessories, as far as weapons goes, he has the one sword, and this is the exact same kind of sword that I've talked about previously with the more recent Mythic Legions figures that I got. Silver blade, gold handle. It's the exact same sword, so it definitely sees its share of reuse. Now, as far as the other accessories, we get the different feet. So you've got, if you want to have them like in an actual flying pose, you have closed taloned feet, which are sculpted incredibly well. They've got that nice deep blue hue to them with some black shading on them. And then the other ones for actually perching him are opened but more grippy. So they're not, you can't really make him stand with these, but he is to be put on a perch for something like this. So I do like it. I think the idea behind him is cool, but they, like I said, it's just kind of wasted on me because I've never used them for any of my figures, but I do like them. I would have just much rather have had more weapons because my birds are always standing 2 feet flat on the ground. And then, like I mentioned, here is Phoenicius next to some of the newer Mythic Legions, just to get an idea of just how different some of the stuff in this line is. So we've got Rhaegor here on the left, and we've got Keltis here on the right. And at times, it almost seems like these don't even go in the same line. It seems like the birds really are their own thing, even though they are still Mythic Legions, but they were something other before that. They were in that Gothropolis line previously. That said, I do think that the Horsemen have really, really stepped their game up since the birds. That's not me saying that I don't like them. I bought them because I thought they looked really cool, and I stand by that. They do look really cool. They are not my favorite figures in the line anymore, because up until now it was really all I had, but now I've got guys like this, and I think these really do blow the birds out of the water, but at the same time, you know, I still really like them. It's just more of this is a progression of the line, and I really do think that the Horsemen are delivering an extremely high quality product. I think they were doing a really good job here. I just think they're doing an even better job now, and that's pretty much what it is. It's a progression of time. I loved this figure when I first got him. I still really love him. He does have his issues, but I still really love this guy. I just happen to like these guys better because it's something new, it's something different, and I really do think they are honing their craft even more. But I mean, come on, he still looks like a cool bird, right? So yeah, like I said, I really liked this figure when I first got him, and I still like him today. Going back to compare him against the new Legion figures, it's definitely kind of a progression of time, like I mentioned. You can see that there is a huge leap in quality just overall from this figure to the ones that I've been looking at now. Does that mean this is a bad figure? Absolutely not. If you were interested now in getting some of these, you still can. You can get them on Big Bad Toy Store. I will put a link down below to those. And he is a cool figure. He is very unique. He's very different. Outside of the fact that the birds all kind of look the same in some fashion, they all are still very different. And if you want something kind of cool, kind of quirky, but very much a sword and sorcery kind of thing, these are really fun figures. And I was really happy to actually go back and play around with these figures because it's made me realize why I bought them in the first place. They are cool, fun, weird bird warriors. I mean, you can't really ask for too much more than that. So that's going to do it for this look at the 4 Horsemen Studios Phoenicius, I still don't know if I'm saying that right, figure. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Let me know what you think. And until next time.